Welcome to Michigan Reimagined, a spotlight podcast. And here's your host, Chris Buck.
So I think most will agree that one of the best parts of Michigan are the Lake Michigan coastal towns. They're each unique and beautiful. One of my favorites is Grand Haven. So today we get to chat with the executive director of the Grand Haven Main Street Downtown Development Authority, Mr. Jeremy Swiftney. Welcome to the show, Jeremy.
Thank you for having me, Chris.
Absolutely. Looking to hear more. I'm really excited about hearing more about this. So downtown development authorities are pretty common in a municipality. Can you share with us a little bit about what a DDA essentially is and what tends to be their mission?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's a thing that most of the communities, like you said, do have in Michigan. It's really designed to be a catalyst or starter for communities' downtown area. It started in the probably late 70s, most likely in Michigan, and it was kind of designed when malls were coming into the forefront and pulling everything away from downtown. There was a way to make sure property values didn't drop, make sure people still visited the core of the community, and make sure that they live in the core of that community.
Okay. So how does a DDA, how are they governed? How are you funded?
Yeah.
What kind of support financially and brain power do you have?
Yeah, so this one's a good question because each one's done a little bit differently, but we're kind of governed by a board. So when you go into different states, it might be a little bit different. But around Michigan, we're governed by a specific board. We're a separate entity, but the same. When we have, we're a Main Street and we're a DDA, there's technically two boards. Our boards are the same people.
Okay.
Because you have to have a board for both. But we're governed that way. We're essentially a working board that reports to the city council at our level or whatever your municipality may have for the leaders of the community. But we get together once a month. We make the big decisions. We talk about anything from small projects that are going on, funding revenues, and events that we have, and then the larger projects that we've got. Who sits on our board? It's all appointed by the mayor in our community, and then that goes to a city council vote. So we have 13 total members. One seat is for the mayor, who's currently in place, and then there's 12 at-large seats. The big thing that we have to have, because we're a larger community than some, is we have to have at a minimum one person who just specifically is a resident of our area, and we have to have a majority of people who are stakeholders, whether it's via being an employee or a manager or owning a building, owning a business. They need to have some sort of stake in it. We're really lucky that we only have one person who doesn't necessarily have a stake in our downtown. He's been in our town for ages. He's got a marketing background and has been hugely instrumental in helping us work with Michigan Main Street and the MEDC to continue being a Main Street community. So, some people are like, well, why wouldn't you have all stakeholders? Well, he is probably more engaged than some of our stakeholders might even be. So,
right on. Okay, and then the funding part, you talked about having capital. How do you raise money?
Yeah, so that's where it gets real tricky. So the DDAs are created so that we can use tax dollars to have projects going on. So we can have larger projects like infrastructure, things like doing sewers, parking lots, city streetscapes. We put in snow melt with one of our TIFs. So we have a current project that is still being paid off from installing the snow melt in the late aughts. I think it was about 2008 or so here in Grand Haven. So our funding comes via that tax capture that we're allowed to capture versus a previously dated economic number that this is what the property value was at in 2004 when we turned in our last plan. And then we can capture anything above that to spend incrementally through our district to make sure that our district continues to improve and continues to offer the services that we offer to our community. We also get funding from our organization through local grants, through state-level grants or federal grants if we're lucky enough. We get it through donations, fundraising, and we get it through a small tax capture. It's a little bit under 2 mils that we're allowed to capture that we use. And we also do have special assessments that our businesses pay. They pay that special assessment for the snow melt operation, so it's not like a free system. They have to pay for the operation. And then we have a special assessment for marketing. So they really wanted to have marketing dollars, and obviously we all know marketing is not cheap.
Right.
So we have an assessment on the businesses. We even got an increase during the middle of COVID because our businesses were clamoring, like, if we don't do this now, and we hadn't increased it in a decade, prices have gone up, and we were still at the same number we had been collecting when we started it. If we didn't increase it, they wouldn't see the return that they want to see. So they've definitely seen in this first year that we've had the increase, much higher return, and all of the additional monies went straight into the marketing campaigns. So they were really pleased with the outcomes that they've seen so far.
So I guess it's competitive, right? You're fighting for tourism dollars, and like I said in the intro, Lake Michigan's peppered with really cool towns, so you've got to remain at the forefront of people's minds and be the destination of choice for people coming in on the weekends or for week-long stays, I guess. That makes a lot of sense to me. Okay.
Yeah, absolutely.
So I've seen the map of your DDA, and I know a little bit about this. So, I mean, there are defined boundaries of what, is the, catchment or whatever you want to call it, but there's boundaries for your DDA.
Yeah.
The map that's on your website has a variety of colors, and I know you mentioned the Main Street is a little different than the DDA, but talk to me about if someone listening were to look at that map, kind of visually explain to us about what they're looking at.
Well, I've got one in my office. I'll just spin my chair around and look at it. The answer of how it started or why it is that way is probably the worst answer ever. You probably hate it as much as I do, which is, well, that's the way it was.
Right.
That's never really a great answer, but with something like this that's historically adopted, it is the answer. You can't change it without allowing any of these parcels and property owners to then leave.
Right.
And we don't want to risk that by adding additional areas. But, you brought up a very good point when you'd mentioned, Main Street and the DDA, and we have different boundaries or different sections. And why did they do it at the time? I don't know. I'm not sure why they separated, other than it probably made sense if you were familiar with Grand Haven. We do have like two core historic shopping districts in our DDA. We have our downtown area, which is, the first 3 blocks where everybody's down in that area. And then we also have the center town, which is at the entry off the highway, and they're their own special vibe. And they're separated by what we call a hilltop or government core, which is really just governmental building, park. So there's nothing kind of in that area shopping-wise. And then there's a bunch of residential or waterfront space, too, which is, people who love the waterfront come to visit, but there's not shops on the waterfront like retail. So we separated it out way back when. When I started, Main Street was definitely in Grand Haven. We've been a Main Street community, and we're very proud to continue to do that. But our Main Street is separate from the DDA district, so it's only specifically was downtown. It was the first 3 blocks. So when I started, we had this kind of disconnect between our downtown and our center town. And I know my history. I hate having like that confrontation of like, well, they get this and we don't.
Right.
And
yep.
It's never a good thing. So the first thing I did when I came on board was try to integrate. So our DDA is now our Main Street. So anything that has retail in it is part of the Main Street. So it opens up a lot of opportunities to them. COVID happened and changed how those opportunities are available. But pre-COVID, it was either if you're in the Main Street, you can apply for certain grants, but if you're not, you can't. And we didn't want to have that disconnect. So that was my first thing, get them on board, make everybody kind of on the same footing. And that's been hugely beneficial to us. And, at the end of the day, I look at it as all one big happy family.
Right.
Logistically, I have to leave it the way it was because that's how it was set up with the state, and changing it is too much of a risk. We don't want to end up costing ourselves in the long run just to change a couple colors on the map.
Right.
But, really, it is all one big happy district. We all pull in the same direction. We all want to see our neighbors be successful. And that even goes outside of the community, too, because, like you had mentioned, we're a lakeshore community. We want to see people coming to us. It's not that we're only a tourist destination, but we also understand that that's when our retailers and our restaurants make the most is out of the summer.
Right. And so as we're wrapping up another summer, as we record this, how did 2022 go? What kinds of events did you have or projects did you facilitate? And, would you say that the energy and maybe the spending levels and all that stuff are the kind of pre-pandemic level, or how do you measure any of that?
That's always tough to measure, especially with small businesses, because what they did in 19 might not even be in the forefront of their mind. So
right.
I would say, based on the feedback I get from sources that I know we have, solid numbers on, it's not quite back, but it's definitely back better than it was, 2020, even 2021. So it's getting there. It's, our buying habits, our spending habits have changed as a country, as a person. So, that's going to take some time to get back there. We have issues in our community, and it's a nationwide issue too with staffing, but our community specifically, we're losing percentages of the youth staff age. So if you look at from 18 to 21, our population has continued to drop about 1% per year. It is a cyclical thing. If you look at our community, it does drop, and we're about at the base now, and it'll start to climb. So we expect within 3 or 4 years it'll be back, in a good area, and it'll go up, and then it'll come back down again in about 15 or so years. That's kind of the cycle. So we get that. It's not only a nationwide thing, we're fighting that as well. So staffing is obviously part of that issue. If they're having to close days that they didn't close in 2019, it's tough to compare apples to apples. But,
right.
You asked about projects. That's probably the big thing. Everybody's like, Grand Haven's amazing. I love it. If you haven't been here in the past few years, you definitely have to come. When COVID hit, the first thing we did is we talked with our retailers and our restaurants, how can we figure this out? Retailers were barely able to be open. Restaurants were still closed. It was May, and we were having conversations with our restaurateurs, we got to do something. Social districts was on the forefront, but it wasn't approved yet. The state hadn't approved those, and we couldn't wait for that to happen because those restaurants would close. If they didn't have the summer that they needed to have, they would have all shut their doors. So we came up with some outdoor dining ideas, and we've expanded upon it every year. The first year, we closed down a lane of traffic. We had them take up their space. Year number 2, we expanded upon that a little bit. We added a social district aspect to it so you could walk around with a drink later in the year. But we also came up with some more vibrancy, some more beautification, and a couple other restaurants jumped in and joined into the party of creating some great, vibrant space. And then this year, we took it even a step further. So in the last 2 years, they had their space, which was great, but our retailers in that, especially the first block where the street was closed, felt lost. They're kind of blocked in by concrete barricades. We didn't just put up flower planters and hope cars wouldn't hit them. We wanted to be safe. We wanted to put up concrete. So we did that. That was more of a public safety thing. I probably would have gone with whatever they told me to do, And when public safety tells you, yes, you can do this, no, you can't, you kind of follow their rules.
Right.
But yeah, this year we were okay, so retailers had a real big issue. They didn't have visibility. Restaurants were in front of their space, which is good and bad because people couldn't get across the street from the public parking to their space. They'd have to walk all the way down to the end of the street. So we came up with how do we expand upon that? Everybody's loving this outdoor dining thing. And we came up with the idea of continuing the closure, letting the restaurants still have their space designated to them. So if you're down here at Kirby or Long Road, Anna's House, Oddside, they all have outdoor space that's designated to them. But then you've got another half of the road that we left open for traffic the last 2 years. Let's close that. Let's think big picture. We could put some games down here like cornhole or ping pong. We could do picnic tables, umbrellas, and just make it like a gathering space. It's not designated to one restaurant. We have a social district, so you could grab to go from any restaurant. You could bring a picnic from home and just hang out and play cornhole downtown. That would be really great. So we went with that plan and decided, hey, let's give it a try. Let's try this out for a year and see. Results have been really good so far. I'm interested to talk to the retailers as we're wrapping this year up and see kind of what their thoughts are. I've talked to them throughout the year. I know one is still kind of trepidatious about it. One is definitely on board. So we just want to make sure everybody's on board as we look towards 2023. It was a really busy summer this year. People absolutely loved the outdoor space. They loved the gathering space. Positive reviews all around. I think the biggest heartburn I've got is the cornhole bags break too much. If that's my biggest problem of the issues that we've got going on, I'd say we had a pretty successful summer down there. I have to replace cornhole bags. That's not a big deal. So.
Right on. Okay. So now, as a non-Grand Haven resident, I kind of view Grand Haven as a summer town, but clearly the place exists 12 months of the year. Do you have much of a winter draw, and are there other projects that you do to get ready for the next summer, or equal but different? Talk to me about the seasonality.
We do have seasonality. I mentioned that a little bit earlier. We are more of a tourist town, but the goal is ultimately that we're a year-round destination, and we're continuing to take steps towards that. That's something that is near and dear to my heart since I am a resident. I live here, and I want my downtown to be the place to go, whether it's January or whether it's July. It doesn't matter. I want it to be the key hub of the community. So we think about it, how do we become more year-round and less seasonal? How do we focus on it? Yeah, we're going to always have tons and tons of people during the summer. We have Coast Guard Fest. We have every event known to man going on. But during the winter, we kind of taper off. So we specifically hold most of our events in the shoulder seasons, the off seasons. We have a winter fest. But the big thing that we've done is we've said, how can we help transition that? And the real answer that we came up with, and this was even pre-pandemic, is we need more people living in the area to support the businesses, to keep their lights on in January and February. Though that's what we really could utilize, and that's what we could make sure that we can then continue to bring in new fun events that are going on during the winter. We can have a larger winter fest, or maybe we can attract a small boutique hotel in the future that could continue to increase our traffic in the winter. But, in the past total of 3 years, we've added 184 residential units. Only 12 of them are condo or own.
Okay.
172 are apartments. And that was very strategic because we understood apartments tend to not be rented by somebody who's not there half of the time. Yeah, Grand Haven is a tourist community. A lot of the condos do sell to somebody who may be an investor or may spend the summers here. And don't get me wrong, my parents do that, and I'm pretty sure they spend more money in my downtown than I do.
Right.
And I live here year-round, and I'm always down there. So that gives you an idea. Some of the tourists that people are like, well, we don't want that person buying a condo. Well, they might spend a lot more money than you realize downtown. But 172 apartments is huge. They're market-rate apartments. A couple of them are below market rate, which is great for affordability. But at the end of the day, that could be 172 additional people or families that are living within 2 to 3 blocks of our downtown or centertown area. Those are going to be the people that support those businesses year-round.
Right.
Do they want to drive 5 miles to Meyer to go get something, or do they want to walk around the corner on the snow melt to get it? Do they want to deal with Amazon, which is great, or do they want to deal with somebody who knows their name and they may pay an extra $1 or $2, but they're getting that level of service and that level of care and zero concern, if there's anything wrong with this, I know the owner of the shop, I can take it back to them and they will 100% make it right. So that's what we've really focused on, is trying to create more people living in there. The projects are almost done. We have one project that just broke ground this year. One is just finishing up, so we're getting real close. By the middle of next year, all of those will be completely filled. We'll have that many more people living in the downtown, and that's great. That's huge for our Main Street, is bringing that many more people living there year-round.
Wonderful. Well, it sounds like you're not bored.
Yeah,
Plenty to do.
Never bored.
Well, how can listeners learn more about the Grand Haven DDA and its Main Street program?
Yeah, so we're available on Facebook, social media, Instagram. It's GH Main Street. And then our website is Downtown GH. They can always find us there, or they can find me on my email or on the City of Grand Haven site as well. Or they can give us a call at the office, which is 616-844-1188.
Wonderful. Well, we've been speaking with the Executive Director of the Grand Haven Main Street Downtown Development Authority, Jeremy Swiftney. Thanks so much for joining me, Jeremy. It's been enlightening.
Yeah, thank you so much.